Beruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Lamed Hey Amud Aleph, the new parak Shishi. The first three prokim predominantly dealt with Kriya Shema. The fourth and the fifth prokim in our Masechta discussed the inyan of Tefillah. And our parak Shishi, focuses on the inyan of Hilchos Brachos. Midiraisa, only Birkas Hamazon is a bracha from the Torah. V'achalta v'sovata uveirachta es Hashem Elokecha. All other brachos were misakein, were tiknu by the Rabbanon. There are three different categories of brachos. Birkas hamitzvos, person says Asher kidishanu b'mitzvosov. For example, on tefillin, lohoniach tefillin. Or Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvosov lahalig ner shel Chanukah. A second category is a category of Birkas Shvach v'hoidah. Person says Shehechayanu v'kiyimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. That's a bracha of Shvach. Shelo yasani goy. It's a bracha of Shvach. Shasa nisim la'avoseinu bayomim hahem bazman hazeh. There's another category, a third category, and that's called Birkas HaNehenin. When a person gets an enjoyment, a pleasure from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world, either by eating something, or drinking something, or even smelling something, those are Birkas HaNehenin. Our Gemara discusses this category called Birkas HaNehenin. Says the Mishnah, asking, Keitzad mevarchin al haperos. In which way, how, do we make brachos on the peiros? Al peiros ha'ilon hu oimer borei priya eitz. Chutz min ha'yayin. She'al ha'yayin hu oimer borei pri ha'gefen. It says over here that when a person beholds a fruit that comes from the tree, he makes a bracha borei pri ha'eitz, whether it's an apple or an orange or a pear, etc. However, there's an exception to this rule, and that is when it comes to wine. Although a grape also has a bracha borei pri ha'eitz, and wine comes from the grapes, and therefore the essence really of the wine is the grapes, whereby you should say a bracha borei pri ha'eitz on the wine, but because wine is special, therefore the Chachamim were kavu a bracha b'fnei atzma, they instituted an additional special bracha for the wine, borei pri ha'gofen. V'al peiros ha'aretz hu oimer borei pri ha'adama chutz min hapas she'al hapas hu oimer hamoitzi lechem min ha'aretz. When it comes to a fruit from the ground, for example, a cucumber or a tomato, he makes a bracha borei pri ha'adama. However, there's an exception to that. Although bread also comes from the ground, it comes from wheat, but nonetheless, because bread is a special food, therefore, again, the Chachamim were kavu bracha b'fnei atzmo and gave the bracha on bread hamoitzi lechem min ha'oretz. Says the Mishnah, v'ala yerokos hu oimer borei pri ha'adama, Rabbi Yehuda oimer borei minei dishoim. When it comes to lettuce or cabbage and such, so there's a machlokes. The Tanna Kama says it's the same bracha as all other vegetables, borei pri ha'adama. However, Rabbi Yehuda says since it's different than a regular vegetable, therefore, since it's not considered to be a vegetable that you then come off a bush, but rather you eat the plant itself, for example. Therefore, you'll then make a different bracha specifying borei minei dishoim. Says the Gemara, asking the following question: Meno hanimili. Where do we know these words that a person is obligated to make a bracha before and after partaking in food? The Tanu Rabbanon Kodesh Hilulim LaHashem. The pasuk over here says that talking about fruits that are grown from the time it's planted in the ground for 3 years, it's called orla, it's off limits, it's aser bahano. The 4th year, it has the same procedure as Meiser Sheni. You take that fruit and you bring it to Yerushalayim and you eat it in Yerushalayim. It has Kedusha. And that's what it means. Kodesh Hilulim LaHashem. You take that which is Kedusha and you give Hilulim LaHashem, give praises to Hashem. And therefore, this pasuk is also teaching us over here that when a person is now enabled to eat the fruit, becomes mutter in the 4th year, when he goes to Yerushalayim, he gives praises to Hashem when he partakes in that food. Teaching us that a person needs to make a bracha before and after partaking in that food. Rabbi Akiva learns from here that it's prohibited for a person to taste anything without making a bracha and thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for that food. Ask the Gemara, V'hai kodesh hilulim lahachi hu da'asa. Is the words kodesh hilulim lahashem, is it coming to teach us brachos to mahalel lashon rabim before and after the food that you're partaking in? Hai mi boile. Hare, we need these words for the following. Chad, first of all, we need one hilul. Dom rachmana achle v'hodar achle. It means to say that this fruit, if a person is not able to bring that fruit to Yerushalayim because it's too far away, it's too hard for him to bring all of that fruit to Yerushalayim, he has the option to be mechalel that fruit onto a matbeya. And he's poide, that's called, he poide that fruit onto the matbeya. He brings that money into Yerushalayim, and then he buys food from that, and he then eats in Yerushalayim. But that fruit that he was then mechalel, the kedusha onto the matbeya, no longer has kedusha, and he can eat it wherever he is outside of Yerushalayim. So we need one hilul, and we change the letter hey with the letter ches, and say chilul. We can mechalel the fruit onto the matbeya. The idoch, and the other, Dovra haton shira, ton chilul. The she'eno ton shira, ein ton chilul. We need the other hilul of hilulim, again, for the word hilul, to change the hey to the ches, because they're pronounced very, with this deep throat, ha, hey, and ches, and therefore can be then switched. And we need that chilul to teach me that only when it comes to the wine libations that are put on the mizbeach, then do the Leviim sing shira. Other korbanos that do not have wine libations, even if they're put on the mizbeach, for example, wine, it has water libations, so they will not then have the Leviim to sing shira on those libations, on that mizbeach. Kid Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmeni Rabbi Yonasan, Dam Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmeni Rabbi Yonasan. Minayin shen oim shira el al hayayin. Where do we know you're only saying shira? The Levim only sing shira when there's a libation of water, libation of yayin. Shenemar says vatoimer lahem agefen hichdalti es tiroishi hamesamech elokim va'anoshim. Will you say that the vine, I shall withhold my grapes, my wine, from being mesamech elokim and man? Ask the Gemara to explain. Imanoshim mesameach elokim b'ameh mesameach. I understand that wine is mesamech, a person, but how is wine mesameach HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Mikan she'ein oimim shira el ala yayin. From here we learn out that shira is only said with a wine libation. That doesn't mean that the Levim do not sing shira in other times. They sing Hallel in other times, they sing shira. But when it comes to the Mizbeach, it's solely when there's a wine libation. Yayin nesech. So the Gemara continues to focus on its question. Hanich lemande tani neta ravoy. It's going to be nicha, that you would have one hillel to learn out. Hilchos brachos, that you make a bracha on food. If you learn out that it's neta ravoy, that it's neta ravai when it's other fruits that are growing on the tree. The first 3 years are orla, and the 4th year is permitted. And that doesn't apply to grapes. Elaman datani kerem ravai, the one who's saying it applies specifically to grapes. Ma'ika lemeimar. What are you going to say? He needs that second hilul to teach me that indeed we have the requirement to that the Levim sing shira when it comes to the libations of the wine. De'itmar b'chir b'shimon b'rebi. Chad tani kerem ravoi, v'chad tani neta ravoi. So it's good only according to the man that says neta ravoi, because then we have an extra hilul of the two hilulim to use for our purposes of teaching us to make a bracha. But if you're using kerem ravai, the one who learns kerem ravai, that's used up for the second hilul that only shira is said ala yayin. Ulaman di'ot tani kerem ravoi. However, even the man says kerem ravai. However, if you learn a gzeira shava, then you'll free up one of the hilulim. As follows: the Tanya, Rabbi Oimer Nemar kan lo hoisif lochem tuvu osoi. It says in regards to the Indian of kerem ravai, it says by ravoi the word tevua, v'nemar lahalan utvuas hakerem. In regard to an admixture, it says the word tvuas hakerem. So he has the word tevua in both places. Ma lahalon kerem, just like the admixture is certainly talking about a kerem, a vineyard. Afkan kerem. So too over here, when it comes to revoi, the fourth year that becomes mutter to eat that fruit in Yushalayim, that's talking about specifically grapes. So then ayasir lechad hilul lebracha, and therefore it frees up one of the hiluls to then teach us that you need to make a bracha on the food that you're about to eat. V'lo yolif gzeir shava bracha minole. But if you don't learn the gzeira shava, then both hilulim are used up. Once again, the first hilul we said is to tell you that can mechalil the grape onto a matbei, onto kesef. The second hilul is that you need that to then teach me that there's no shira el al hayayin. So therefore, that's also teaching me the hilul of ton chilul. V'imnami yolif gzeira shava. But let's say you do learn the gzeira shava and does free up one of the hiluls. Ashkechon la'achorov lefona minayin. That only teaches me one bracha, a bracha afterwards, since we have a precedent of Birkas Hamazon, which is after a person eats the meal. So then the one hilul will teach me only a bracha for afterwards. But where do I learn that you need to make a bracha on the fruit or the vegetable or anything else that you're eating before you partake? Says the Gemara, holokasho, it's not difficult. Da asya bekal vachomer. We can bring a kal vachomer. Kishehush saveya mivarech. Kishehu roiv lo kol shekain. If a person is already filled up, and then he makes a bracha, then certainly when he's hungry, he shall make a bracha. Eshkechon kerem, shar mini minayin. Okay, so now we talked about kerem, but where do we know other things? If we're not learning neta ravai, we're learning kerem ravai. So we only know about grapes. So how do we know then about other things that you need to make a bracha? The yolif mi kerem. And by the way, we're going to come back to neta ravai. But according to this man da'amar, this opinion who says kerem ravai, so then we only learn out kerem. Where do we know other things you will also be required to make a bracha on? Ma kerem davar shenehene v'ton bracha. Explains the Gemara. Just like kerem, a vineyard, is something that you get hana, you get pleasure from when you partake in eating those grapes, and therefore you say a bracha on it. Af kol davar shenena ton bracha. So to anything is called a binyanav. Anything then we can learn out from this that when you have hana, you get pleasure, you would make a bracha. Ask the Gemara, Ika lemifrach. When it comes to grapes, there's a requirement that if it's oilelois, if it's it's not considered to be a ready type of grapevine, and the cluster of grapes are premature, and they're undeveloped, they're called oilelois, and they must be left for the poor. And therefore we see that when it comes to grapes, there's a special halacha, we'll call it a chumrah, in regards to the grapes, and maybe there, because of this chumrah, we see that grapes are unique, and therefore they require a bracha. But other things, they do not have such a chumrah, do not require a bracha. Says the Gemara, Kama toichiach. Stalks, referring to bread, that will prove that indeed, when a person has hana, he makes birkas hamazon, and therefore, even though it doesn't have olelois, so therefore a person will learn from there that if a person is nehene, he has to make a bracha on the food that is nene. Ask the Gemara a pircha that you're going to learn out from challah, but challah is different because you have to take from the isa, from the dough of the challah, and that's unique to challah. We don't find that in other things, and therefore there's a chumrah by challah that doesn't exist in other places. Maybe that's why by challah, which has this chumrah, you're required to make a bracha, but everything else not. Says the Gemara, kerem yochiach. So then we'll go back to kerem, which does not have the requirement of taking out challah, and that will then prove that indeed, when you're nene from the food that you're partaking in, you must make a bracha. The chazer hadin, and then the argument continues and returns. Lo ri'izeh k'ri'izeh. The nature of this one is not like the nature of that. V'lo ri'izeh k'ri'izeh. Hatzad hashove shebehen. If we take these two things together, kama, which is referring to lechem, bread, and we take grapes, we say that this tzad hashava teaches the following. Davar shenene v'ton bracha, af kol davar shenene ton bracha. Just like these things, because you're nena, you enjoy before eating them. While you're eating them, you're going to make a bracha before and after. So too over here, you'll make a bracha and anything else that you partake in before and after. Ask the Gemara on this tzad hashava. When it comes to the grapes, then there's something called yayin nesech. You put on the mizbeach. When it comes to lechem, we know there's something called menachos, of flour offerings that you put on the mizbeach. So those are unique to this tzad hashava. But everything else doesn't have that. So you can't learn out other things from this tzad hashava. Says the Gemara, va'asi na mitzayis the izbei tzad mizbeach. The Gemara just points out that also zayis, when it comes to olives, they also have this aspect of being used on the mizbeach because of its oil. Ask the Gemara on this point of zayis being on the mizbeach, why are you learning out from there? V'zayis mitzah mizbeach osi. You have to learn it from the fact that it's mizbeach. We have an explicit verse. It says kerem in the verse in regards to zayis. Dichsiv vayaver migodish ve'ad kamo ve'ad kerem zayis. So you see that the zayis is put together with the word kerem. So you see that kerem includes a zayis. So you don't have to come on to the fact that it's connected to the mizbeach, that we use a zayis, namely the oil on the mizbeach. Omra papa kerem zayis ikri, kerem stamalo ikri. No, there it says kerem zayis. That's why it's referring to the olives. But when it says kerem without saying the word zayis, it refers to grapes in the vineyard, only grapes and not the olives. Now Gemara goes back to its original question, mikol mokum kashya, but nonetheless it's difficult. How do we learn out this tzad hashava to everything else? Because this tzad hashava, again, lechem and grapes are unique because they are both brought on the mizbeach. Says the Gemara, ma lahat tzad hashava shebehen sheken yesh bohen tzad mizbeach. Elo, the yolif la mishiva hamin. The Gemara falls off from learning from the tzad hashava and says, let's learn the hilchas brachos, the requirements to make a bracha from shivas haminim, from the 7 species. Ma shivas haminim dover shenehene v'ton bracha, because the pasuk in regards to the shiva minim says over there that a person will partake in the shiva minim, and it says be'eretz chita v'sora, and afterwards it says v'achalta v'sovata uveirachta. So you see that it's going also on the shiva minim. So we can learn out from there to everywhere else. Af kol davar shenene ton bracha. So too everywhere else, when you get hana from the fruit or vegetable, whatever you're partaking in, you also need to make a bracha. Ask the Gemara, ma shivas haminim sheken chayavim bibikurim. Shivas haminim is unique because with shivas haminim you're required to bring the bikurim fruits to the kohen in Yerushalayim on the mizbeach. And therefore, you can't learn out from the shivas minim to everything else because there's this chumrah over here by the shiva minim of bikurim. V'od, and further, hateinach la'achorov. It would only be good in regards to making the bracha afterwards because we learned out v'achalta v'sovata v'rachas Hashem Elokecha, which is a bracha achrona. Lefanav minayin. But where we know to make a bracha before, so the Gemara brings like it said before, halakasha. The asi v'kal v'choymer kishu saveya mevarech kishu roiv lo kol shekain. If a person is full, he makes a bracha, then certainly when he's hungry, he shall make a bracha. So that answers up the second of the two questions. But we're still left with the first question. Ulaman detani. Now they're going to go back to the other opinion of Neta Ravoi. Ulaman detani Neta Ravoi. The one who learns out that the fourth year is referring to other fruits, that the first 3 years is off limits as Orla, it's Asr Bahana. The fourth year you bring it to Yushalayim, it's mutter then to eat in Yushalayim. So, Teinach Kol Davar Netiya, that's only going to be good that we have a second Hilul that's freed up in regards to that which is Netiya, that which is planted. Because it's referring to Neta Ravoi, those things that are planted in the ground. But what about foodstuffs that are not planted in the ground? How will we know that you need to make a bracha on those? The labar netiya kigon basar, beitzim, v'dogim, menole. How do I know when it comes to meat and eggs and fish that a person needs to make a bracha on those things? Ela svarahu. The Gemara concludes it's a svara. It's prohibited for a person to enjoy this world without making a bracha. When a person enjoys something, he's to turn to the one who gave him that, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and make a bracha thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for that food. The Gemara now brings a brisa expanding this. Tanu Rabbanan. Asur lo la'adam sheyene min ha'olam hazeh b'li bracha. If a person does have hana from this world without making a bracha, then he's considered to being moel in the kedusha, something that is hekdesh, that is consecrated to be of kedusha, and he then uses that thing that is mechalal that kedusha, and that's called me'ilah. If a person will then make he'll partake in food without making a bracha, is considered he's taking me'ilah, he's taking the kedusha and being moil in the kedusha, because since that food was given to him by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it all belongs to Hashem. If he doesn't take that kedusha, make a bracha to then, so to speak, allow it to be then chulin for him to eat, then he's then being over me'ilah. My takante asked the Gemara, what is the takana? What is the remedy for such a thing? Person eats and then he doesn't make a bracha. Yelech eitzel chacham. Let him go to a wise man, a chacham, to then tell him what to do. Yelech eitzel chacham. My avile. How is it going to help if he already ate? Ha avile isura. He already did an isur by eating the food without making a bracha. Ela no. Omarava yelech eitzel chacham miikara. Before he partakes in the food, he should go to the chacham. So that he'll teach him hilchos brachos, and then he'll know which bracha to say and what food, and then make a bracha before he partakes in the food. Omar Rav Yehuda, similarly Omar Shmuel, Kol hanena min ha'olam hazeh b'lo bracha, ki'ilu nena mikodshe shamayim, shenemar la'Hashem ha'aretz u'mloyo. The whole world and all of its fullness belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If a person then takes it without permission, so to speak, by not giving a bracha to Hashem, then that person is ki'ilu nene mikodshe shamayim. It belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, has kedushas of Hashem. Rabbi Levi Rami ksiv la'Hashem ha'aretz u'mloyo v'ksiv ha'shamayim shamayim la'Hashem v'ha'aretz nilsan livnei Adam. Rabbi Levi, he takes two psukim that seem to be contradictory. One pasuk says la'Hashem ha'aretz u'mloyo. To Hashem is the world, is the land and its fullness. The other pasuk says hashamayim shamayim laHashem, but v'ha'aretz, the land, is nasan livnei Adam. That belongs now, is given to man. So does it belong to Hashem or is it given to man? Says the Gemara, lo kashya, kan koidem bracha, kan la'achar bracha. If it's before the bracha, then it still belongs to Hashem. Once a person makes a bracha, then it's Hashem was nasan ha'aretz livnei Adam. He gave it to man to partake in. Says the Gemara, Amar Chanina bar Papa, Kol hanena min ha'olam hazeh b'lo bracha, ki'ilu goizel laHaKadosh Baruch Hu u'knesses Yisrael. When a person gets enjoyment in this world without making a bracha on it, he's stealing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Knesses Yisrael and Klal Yisrael. In other words, he steals the bracha that's due to the Meitiv, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the benefactor. And he's also stealing from Klal Yisrael, who's not going to then be able to get that food, that vegetation or that fruit, going to have the bracha that will cause that to then be grown and to be enjoyed. So he's stealing that bracha from Klal Yisrael. Shenemar, it says, Goizel aviv v'imoy v'oimer ein posha chaver hu li'ish mashchis. The pasuk says he's stealing from his father and from his mother. And he says there's no posha. He says, after all, what's the big deal? And therefore, because he doesn't consider it to be a big deal and others learn from him, they also don't make brachos. And therefore, he's a chaver, a friend to the ish mashchis, to the one who is a destroyer. Ve'ein aviv ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the one that he's goizel from is referring to Hashem. Because it says in that pasuk, he's goizel aviv. And aviv refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenemar v'halo hu avicha kanecha. Behold, he is your father, your creator. Ve'ein imo ela knesses Yisrael. And imo refers to stealing from Klal Yisrael. Shenemar, as it says, Shema beni musar avicha, v'al titosh teras imecha. So we find imecha as a reference to Klal Yisrael. Ask the Gemara, my chaver hu li'ish mashchis. What is the latter part of that verse when it says he's a chaver, a friend of the ish mashchis? Omra Chanina bar Papa, chaver hu Yeravam ben Nevat. He is a friend of Yeravam ben Nevat, who was choite umachti. He didn't want, when he became king of the Asar Shvatim, that they should then go up Ba'aliyas HaRegel to Yerushalayim and pay homage to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore, he had them diverted to go to Mekomos of Avodah Zarah. So he was choite and machti Klal Yisrael. If a person does not make brachos, then he's a chaver who to Yeravam ben Nevat shehishchis es Yisrael la'avim shebashamayim, who then caused destruction, taking people away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu Avinu shebashamayim.